Hi everybody, I'm Stockton Helbing and I'm here today to hang out with you and discuss the etude that I wrote for the 2023 Texas All-State and All-Region Jazz Auditions. It's entitled Big Texas, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But before I dive into the different elements of the piece, I just want to remind you that my goal is always the same with these etudes, that every single person who has the courage to work hard and prepare this piece for the audition will be made better from the experience. I want everyone to have a great time learning and studying this music, and I'll be showing you some elements that can help you improve or hopefully dispel any confusion you may have. But I know the deal. Everyone really just wants to hear me play the etude first, probably. So let's go ahead and start off with me performing the etude for you all. Here we go. Here's some basic overview ideas about this piece. With any big band chart that you play, you want to first of all familiarize yourself with the information that's at the upper left-hand corner of the piece. On the etude this year that I wrote, Big Texas, we can see that it says bouncing swing, which tells us right away that the eighth notes will be swung. The easiest way to think about that is we're relating the eighth notes to the first and third triplet partial and eighth note triplets. Triple, let triple, let triple, let triple, let trip, let trip, let trip, let trip. We're swinging the eighth notes. And underneath that, it has some important information. It says, in the style of Frankie Dunlop. That means if you do not know who Frankie Dunlop is, you must familiarize yourself with him. And every year that I have the privilege of writing one of these etudes, I try to highlight an important jazz drum set player from the past that would be beneficial for everybody to know the playing of. And this year I decided to choose one of my favorites, Frankie Dunlop, who was both an incredible big band drummer and a very incredible small group drummer. There is a great record of him playing with Maynard Ferguson's big band entitled A Message from Birdland, and Frankie sounds spectacular. Also, my favorite work of Frankie Dunlop happened in the 1960s when he was a member of Thelonious Monk's quartet, when they made some incredible recordings for Columbia Records, which is important and very related to studying this piece, because I wrote this piece, Big Texas, based on a song that Monk recorded on his incredible album Monk's Dream, featuring Mr. Dunlop on drums. And the piece is called Mississippi Bright. I am borrowing nearly verbatim from the content of that tune. Mr. Dunlop sounds incredible on it, so I want you to hopefully get that recording and familiarize yourself with it by having fun listening and playing along with Mr. Dunlop so that you can start gaining some of the key characteristics of his wonderful jazz drum set playing and taking them and adding them to your own rendition of playing this etude. After we look at these important pieces of information that always appear in the upper left-hand corner of a big band chart, the next thing we want to do is familiarize ourselves with the roadmap. The roadmap of a chart really means how we get to the beginning all the way to the end and the various directions we have to follow to do so. That takes into account any repeated sections, first and second ending, or any types of DS al coda, DS al fine, DC al coda, DC al fine, those type of things. This year, we'll see that we have a repeated section at letter A. We're going to have a first and second ending, so you always want to take note of forward repeat signs. That's always a great warning, especially if you're sight reading, you see a forward repeat sign go by, you have to take a mental note of, uh-oh, I will be returning to this at some point. I do the same thing when I see little signs. For instance, in measure 7, you'll see a box that says fine. That also sets off my alarms if I'm sight reading. Uh-oh, I know I'm going to at some point return to this, or if I see a sign or anything like that. So on this piece, make sure you take the first and second ending at letter A, and they have some different things that are asked of us the first and second time, both dynamically and stylistically. Then when we get to the very end of the piece, we see DC al fine, and that, the short of it means go all the way to the very beginning of the piece and play until you get to the fine. Fine is where you stop. So we'll go all the way through the piece, go all the way back to the beginning, and stop at the end of measure 7. So roadmap is very important that you always familiarize yourself with when you're playing a piece of music. Now let's get to some other important details, broad, big picture ideas of what we're doing here. As I mentioned, you want to listen to Mr. Dunlop playing on that Mississippi Bright track with Thelonious Monk. And we hear right off the bat that that is a 16 bar form, or 16 measure long song. It's actually a contrafact. Contrafact is a new melody composed over previously well-known harmony or chord changes. In this case, it's based on an old tune called Sweet Georgia Brown. Those of you who are Harlem Globetrotters fans like I was growing up, they're great. They often use the song Sweet Georgia Brown, which is whistled, usually being whistled while they'll do all kinds of incredible basketball tricks. So Monk's contrafact, Bright Mississippi, is 16 bars long. So is my etude. Once we get through the short half chorus or 8-bar intro, you'll notice letter A is a 16-bar phrase repeated twice. Letter B is a 16-bar phrase that's not repeated, played once. And letter C is a 16-bar phrase. So the song in and of itself unlocks so many possibilities. A lot of times when we're new to playing jazz music or gaining experience playing jazz music, we become frustrated because we find ourselves at a loss for what to do. How do I come up with good comping ideas? How do I come up with good soloing ideas? I'm here to tell you that you, are never alone. We're never alone when we're playing music like this. We always have the song form and the melody to help inform our playing. So familiarizing yourself with Mississippi Bright, being able to sing it, being able to play it around the drums is only going to help you in your journey to become better at playing this etude. I always write these etudes in a way that we can approach each phrase to gain knowledge and experience and learning. And what I'm going to do now is take you through each of these phrases. And what I mean by that is where we see a rehearsal marking or letter. You'll see intro in a box, letter A, B, and C. They all have boxes around them. We typically call those rehearsal letters or rehearsal numbers. These are very helpful to us when we're looking at a big band chart because they are almost always placed at the beginning of a new phrase or at the beginning of something new occurring. We want to make sure we always highlight those, and in this etude, that can help show you some different subsections that you can study to become better at this etude. So we're going to break it apart into its 4 sections starting right now. Let's start with the intro. At the intro, we see a lot of information. We see that we have etude writing or ensemble writing, which is that rhythmic notation, such as in measure 1, where it's a large note in the center of the staff. We also see there are some articulation markings above those notes. Those articulation markings are not drumistic articulations, but rather telling us, the drummer, what the rest of the ensemble is doing. When a staccato note, which is that dot, appears above a quarter note, usually horn players will treat that as an 8th note. Dot, dot, dot. At the drum set, I think that short sounds are always nice on the snare drum. I save my bass drum for long sounds. I like to stay away from toms for figures because the tonality of the toms blends with the horns usually in a non-pleasing way, makes it a little bit too muddy. And then I have a solo fill right after that where I want to respond to the figure and start heading towards the next dynamic, which is the other thing we need to keep our eyes on, is that we have mezzo piano for 2 bars, mezzo forte for 2 bars, and forte. So there's a lot going on here. And then we have solo fill written. And solo fill is bait for us drummers. Every time we see solo fill, I know I do, I automatically want to think about Buddy Rich playing the greatest drum solo ever for a bar, which is ludicrous. We want to make sure we take care of the band in between these different figures. It's also a great idea to slow down the tempo when you're learning something and honing your craft. I'll play the first 8 bars a little slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a tenuto marking on the downbeat of measure 3. That's the line above the quarter note. So watch out for that. That means long, sustained full value. So the band's going to go boo, dot, dot. And you'll notice that I played that on my ride cymbal. I just used the stick rather than the crash. And I like to grab and mute so that it doesn't bleed into those short sounds. Last but not least, we have a setup time marcation that occurs at measure 8. What I'm going to do there is be preparing the band, not only for the decrescendo that's written, but for a 2-feel at letter A that we'll talk about here in a moment. You can do a lot of different things there, but I would recommend keeping it simple no matter what you do. It could be a great opportunity to use the wonderful stick shot articulation. That's a great way to show nice decrescendo while keeping it very, very apparent where time is. You hear that used in the jazz strumming tradition a lot. I would work each 4-bar phrase separately first, make sure you're comfortable with measure 1 through 4, then the next 4 bars, and then put them together, and you should have a nice, complete 8-bar intro. Here it is again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Something nice and simple like that. I went a little bit quickly that time. Remember, take it slow and build from there. Letter A, we have a lot of information given to us. First of all, it says that it is the head of the tune, which means the melody. Jazz musicians will point to their head sometimes to indicate that. It says that the first time we're going to play a 2-feel, the second time we'll be walking. That means a 2-feel, the bass player is going to be playing primarily half notes. It's a little bit of a lower intense feel. Ba-doom, boom, ba-doom, ga-doom, ba-doom, boom. I like to complement that often by playing on my hi-hat, although you can also play on the ride cymbal. What I'm doing on the hi-hat is breaking up the time a little bit to reflect the half note pulse coming from the bass. I'm going to use the tip of my stick. I'm going to play on the top of the hi-hat 1 and 3 and 1 and 3 and 1 and 3 and 1 and 3. I'm going to be open for all of those with my left foot. Then I'm going to snap closed on beat 2 and 4 using the left foot to make sure it matches the intensity of my sticks on top. Note that I'm open on the upbeats. A lot of people will make this mistake. Rather than by being open on the end of 2 and the end of 4, we get a nice legato connected sound, which actually builds the intensity. And then I'm going to catch those figures on the snare drum that are above the slashes. Anytime I have figures above slash notation, that tells me they're either melody cues or backgrounds. In either case, because they're appearing around slashes, either above or below, I'm going to build them into my time feel. 1, 2, 3, 4. As I'm more comfortable, I could dance around a little bit more with my hi-hat, maybe like Roy Haynes would do. Or I could start responding with more of my drum set, maybe some bass drum. It depends on what you're comfortable doing coordinationally and what you like to hear. Go listen to Mr. Dunlop for more ideas. The second time, we're walking, which means the bass players, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, they're going to be playing walking quarter notes. I will complement that more than likely by going to a ride cymbal, but I'm not going to go to my primary ride cymbal. I'm going to go to my secondary ride cymbal. It's on my left in this situation. Usually us right-hand dominant players keep our heaviest, largest primary ride cymbal on our right. On my left, if I only have 2 cymbals, I like to have a cymbal that I can also ride on. If you only have a cymbal that says crash cymbal on it, that's okay. You can ride on it. And I'm going to use that smaller, lighter cymbal for a lighter section. And I'm going to reserve my heavy lifting cymbal, my primary cymbal, for the loud section at letter B. That way, I don't have to work harder to sound bigger. I'm going to let the tool, the cymbal, do the work for me. So I'm going, at the second time at letter B, I'm going to go to my ride cymbal on my left. Just a little quick note, the first ending, we're going to be building towards that, so you want to foreshadow that 4 feel. I'm going to start at measure 21, as if it's the first time, so you can hear that transition. A 1, 2, 3. You can hear now I'm playing the figures on the snare nice and light, nice and short to match their articulations, and then I'm responding in a similar style to Mr. Dunlop. And you can hear him do that on Bright Mississippi off of Thelonious Monk's Monk's Dream album. And you'll hear him reply to Monk's short dut, 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 response. Dut, 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 response. That type of thing. Go check out Mr. Dunlop and you'll hear all kinds of incredible ideas that you can borrow from to help heighten the things you want to play while you're playing this section. In closing with section A, I would learn the 2-feel part first. Make sure you're comfortable playing the first time at a mezzo piano dynamic on the hi-hat, although you can also play on the ride cymbal. You'll see me do that on one of the demonstration videos of me playing the entire etude. There's lots of possibilities. There's never one way to do something in jazz drumming. But I would recommend getting comfortable with the 2-feel part first, then the 4-feel, then putting them together, and then go back and add the intro. Go intro A first and second time. Build that before moving on. Letter B is labeled shout chorus. The shout chorus of the big band chart is typically the apex or pinnacle of the chart that we're building towards. We have a lot of action here at letter B. Let's talk about it phrase by phrase, or 4-bar phrase by 4-bar phrase. First, in the first 4 bars of letter B, we have a little bit of an ensemble send-off with tutti figures in measure 26, then a drum solo that culminates in bar 29 with a quarter note by the ensemble on beat 4 with a marcato, which means short, a fat short, at forte, but they're going to be a piano in the beginning of bar 30. So we have a lot to watch out for here. This is where I can start looking ahead and reverse engineering my playing. I can predetermine, okay, in bar 29, I know I want snare drum on beat 4 to match that marcato of the band. Thereby, I'm going to drop bass drum quarter note on beat 3 to set that up. A 1, 2, 5. That already starts helping me fill in the blanks of my solo. So you don't have to feel like you're sitting there just filling in all the dead space. And remember, we're playing the tune. This is still over the tune. So you could borrow ideas from the melody. So here's the first 4 bars of letter B. A 1, 2, 3, 4. You could definitely hear using my snare drum and floor tom in the 3rd bar of my phrase. But boop, deet. I quoted that melody there. So remember, you're never alone. You can always use that melody to come up with ideas. That takes me to the next 4 bars where I have a lot of dynamics occurring. I have terraced dynamics that are occurring in bar 30, and then I have a gradual crescendo and gradual decrescendo in bar 31, 32 to slash notation. That's a lot of action. I want to be careful about what orchestrational choices I make, and I want to make sure that my gradual dynamics match going up and coming down. A 1, 2, 3, 4. couple tricks that I used there. I kept it really simple. A shoulder crash for some of that soft work on the ride cymbal. For those of you who might not know, a shoulder crash articulation is just like a normal stroke, except rather than letting my tip strike, I'm going to lay the flat of the stick on the cymbal. This allows me to get that nice full articulation without fully crashing on the cymbal and losing control of it. That's really important for me to get that crescendo to the decrescendo to match both ways. The rest of it is a lot of the same business. You're going to see 34, 35, 36, 37. We have a mixture of playing tutti figures and then going to playing figures above the slash notation, so we're playing time. And the same thing happens in the last 4 bars. I wrote it so that you can work each 4-bar phrase till you feel confident with it, and then start putting them together. Maybe put the first 8 bars. Then work the 34 through 41, that 8-bar phrase, before you put the whole thing together. Take your time, slow it down, work it out. Make sure that while you're playing it, you're able to think about everything you're doing. You need to be in control. You need to be mindful of what's happening up here. There should be a lot happening in your mind. And don't forget to feed it with the best big band drumming nutrition you can find, which is great big band drumming on classic jazz recordings. Frankie Dunlop, Mel Lewis, Sonny Payne, Papa Joe Jones, Sam Woodyard, any of those people and beyond. The more you listen to those types of people, the more it will start helping you make sense of what you see on a page. All right, here we are, letter C, and it's every drummer's favorite part because it says drum solo. And that's what us drummers live for. I mean, I think we all walk through life imagining that everything's a drum solo. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. But we have an 8-bar drum solo to start letter C. Remember, it's still over the song form, so the melody is your best friend. But then we have another instruction given to us. It says, a la Frankie Dunlop. That means in the style of Frankie Dunlop. Well, we don't know what that is if we haven't listened to Frankie Dunlop. There's a lovely picture of Mr. Dunlop up there looking over me. You want to listen to him and borrow from him as much as you're able. That sounded decent, sounded kind of like Mr. Dunlop. In my mind, the whole time, I'm using that melody. And the melody gives me this beautiful tool that I can use that goes all the way back to the music of Africa. The music of Africa is what helped build jazz music in New Orleans in the early 1900s. And it's through the atrocities of the African slave trade that this rich, amazing musical culture came to the United States. And we can still use some of those great key characteristics of African music in playing jazz music today. This is classic call and response. We hear Frankie and Monk do that on the original recording off the record Monk's Dream, where Monk plays the melody, boom, da, da, and we hear Frankie respond in his comping, da, boom, boom, bop, 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 da, da, I can play little games like that that almost always sound spectacular. Check it out. Here's my 8-bar drum solo at letter C. I'm going to call, and I'm going to respond. 2, 3, 4. I actually think it was better than the solo I played earlier. It's just so good. It makes so much great sense, and that's what makes it sound intense to the listener. So that's a great skill that you can use. After you take care of your drum solo, just be careful. The end of your drum solo in measure 49, you want to look ahead because bar 50, we have some serious business to take care of with an extreme dynamic shift, some short articulations, and some crescendos. Just watch out. Work it 4 bars at a time, and then you'll be able to put it all together. And then you can start working your way backwards. When you feel good about letter C, go back to letter B and go B, C. Make sure that's great. And then work your way back. Go second time A, B, C. And then go back. First and second time A, B, C. Then all the way to the intro. Before you know it, you've built this etude. And when we get to the end of letter C, we have D, C, Al, Fine. It's going to take us right back to the top, right back to the intro. And you can handle it the way you handled it the first time and put great bookends on this etude. You should be in business now. I hope that this little video lesson has helped each and every one of you feel less intimidated by this etude and more excited for the opportunities that you have to learn from it. more importantly, the opportunities you have to learn from the rich history of jazz music and great musicians like drummer Frankie Dunlop, like pianist Thelonious Monk, and the list goes on and on and on. As someone who's been listening to jazz for most of their life, I can tell you that it only gets better. It only gets more and more fun. So don't let the fact that you do not have a play-along track on this etude intimidate you. Quite the contrary, that gives you the opportunity to flex your musical imagination. And your goal should be to play this etude in such a way that the adjudicators who are listening to your audition feel like there's a band playing with you. Whenever I do charts like this, I'm hearing a band in my head. And the greatest way to help that happen is to listen to as much jazz music as possible, especially Bright Mississippi by Thelonious Monk. Mississippi Bright, sorry, I keep inverting it. Mississippi Bright by Thelonious Monk. And hearing those sounds in your mind as you're having fun creating. If you have any confusion or you have comments or questions, just leave them in the comments section below and I'll do my very best to respond, or you can always email me through my website. Most importantly, I hope that you have fun playing this tune, and I wish you the very best with your jazz drumming future.